So it's I think, a totally new way of looking at food without calories. And in the studies so far, after 3 months, the important thing is actually 82% of people had more energy. We weren't expecting that at all. And actually, the weight loss, I think, is not that's exaggerated. It's not nearly as high as that. There's quite a bit of individual variation. But the most important thing is this energy and less hungry, just by evening out these peaks and eating more healthily, I think. We're doing a big proper study of this that's underway. So we just want to now give you just a snapshot of some of the things I've changed my mind on. Bread is one of them. A picture of bread? Yes, I've got a picture of bread, but I think this is a good one. This lot here, now, I thought that actually looks quite healthy, most of it. You know, from the healthy end of the supermarket. And, you know, we've got sourdough here, we've got a ciabatta, rustic ciabatta, we've got my own sourdough bread, we've got some seeded breads, we've got some whole meals here, with and without seeds. But there was a tenfold difference in the health benefits of those breads, which isn't advertised, it's very hard to find about why that is. And often it was the fiber to carbohydrate ratio. So very hard to find breads that go above 5 grams of fiber. And yet, it's probably the most important staple we eat. We're fooled by things that look brown and have, you know, healthy, like I was fooled in my M&S tuna sandwich. Really bad for me, full of starchy carbs. I thought I was having something healthy. So we're being fooled a lot. The ciabatta, so, I mean, there's some debate about whether the Romans had ciabatta or not, and you might think it's very ancient, but in fact it was only invented in the 1980s by a rather good marketing firm in Italy, and it's really rubbish bread. But, you know, we're so in the dark on this about bread, so it turns out that obviously obviously my own rye sourdough is the best. Because I know exactly what goes into it. I can, you know, and it's very heavy. May not suit everybody, but tenfold difference in how you look at breads. So do look at the amount of fiber to carbohydrate ratio, is what I learned about that. And, you know, if you like a French baguette or a croissant, fine, but it is a rare treat. It will give you a massive sugar spike if you're like me. And so that just because a croissant is light and fluffy doesn't mean it has that effect on your body. And so rye breads, those dark ones, multi-grain ones, they're the best ones to go for. And, you know, there's lots of fakery, and in supermarkets they actually use all the stuff they bake is frozen. It's often a year old, those doughs and things like that they make. And by baking it on the premises, they don't have to tell you what's in it. They don't have to tell you what sugars are in there or anything else. And often ultra-processed, many ingredients, emulsifiers, sticky gum and things to put it together. Milk. So I changed my mind several times about milk. When I was young, I was told not to have milk because my mum's acupuncturist said it would be bad for my mucus and it caused allergies. So I stopped it for 10 years and it made no difference at all. And I think I switched also to some of these fake milks, almond milk, oat milk, etc. And as you know, I was saying I was having a fair bit of skimmed or semi-skimmed milk. Particularly our kids thought, oh, that was a good thing to do. And I know for children, that's definitely not the good thing to do. All the nutrients are in the fat, and skimming it really doesn't help them at all. And almond milk, not very good for the environment. But compared to cow's milk, all of these are much better. Oat and almond or soya, cow's milk is very bad for the environment. Okay, so if we worry about the environment, the fact you have to have large cows making it, that take up a lot of land and a lot of grass and produce a lot of methane and all the other things, it's not as bad as the meat, but it is definitely several-fold worse than the problems of almonds, which cause water problems, or oat milk, which has its own problems. And if you have a lot of oats, you are going to be exposing yourself to really high levels of glyphosate, a Roundup, a herbicide. And some of these brands, like Oatly, I think say they are organic. So one thing that's definitely important if you have a lot of oat to have organic, otherwise you will be ingesting a lot of this stuff. But the other downside with oat milk is there's not much fat in it, and if there isn't much fat in it, there's lots of sugar, and it gives me a sugar spike. So it has really, compared to normal milk, which is much flatter and seems to suit me much better. So I've given up my oat milk. I've given up my skim milk. If I do have any, it will be at tiny amounts of one of these, but generally I have my tea black, and that's sorted the problem. Fish. Love fish. Fish is healthy, isn't it? Nothing wrong with fish. But I've changed my mind. I don't think we should be having, as every government in the world says, 2 portions of fish a week for our health. For one reason, it's totally non-sustainable. If everyone did that in this country, the oceans would be devoid of fish probably within 3 years. We've overfished it all. Fish farms, are they the answer? 60% of all the fish you eat comes from fish farms. No, because it takes more little fish to feed the big fish in the fish farms than you can produce. So for every farmed fish, you're having an extra 1.5 other equivalent fish. So you're using them up even more. So at the moment, they haven't got fish farms to be efficient, and in many parts of the world, like shrimps and prawns, they dig up whole areas of Vietnam and Thailand, destroy lots of natural habitat to produce these highly industrialized fish farms, spraying them with antibiotics, pesticides, the lot. It's not very nice. So environment is bad. And what about the health benefits? I think they're overhyped. For 2 reasons. You do a meta-analysis, you find actually fish eaters, not twice as likely to live long or anything. They have a 10% increased mortality on most of these studies, which, considering that it's quite biased, these studies, it's very hard to adjust for those factors. That's within the margin of error. So I'm not saying they're harmful, but I think that the idea that with this superfood that made my parents tell me it made me brainy if I ate lots of fish, and I'd be stupid if I didn't. No evidence at all that works. And then people say, well, but it's a great source of omega-3s. You can't just throw out all those omega-3s. They're crucial. All those bus adverts tell you they are. Well, they're not. All the studies now, big studies done on omega-3 versus a placebo in a randomized control trial, so omega-3 doesn't work. It doesn't work for preventing heart attacks. It doesn't work for preventing strokes. It doesn't work to make you live longer. It only works to help pregnant women who might have poor diets, or if in the few months after you've had your first heart attack, for reasons we don't understand. But they've done massive studies now, over 100,000 people in these trials for over 10 years. There's no doubt it doesn't work as we thought it did. So fish has lost its gloss for me. I do like it, but have it in a restaurant. Don't have it regularly. Choose good stuff. Never have the cheap sort of processed stuff. Pick another source of protein instead. The one exception is we should be eating more mussels and clams. They are exceptionally good for nutrients, and they're anti-polluting, and they're totally sustainable. Okay, so rather than exporting all our mollusks to France and Italy, we should be eating them ourselves. And then we'll get everything we need. Mushrooms are amazing. I thought they were it was all hype about mushrooms being good. And we have hundreds of edible species. We just maybe have a dozen or so that we eat in this country. There are many more. You can farm them, you can have them wild, and an incredible source of protein. They're actually more like us than they are close to plants. So a third of the world is actually full of hyphae and fungi. And if you put them in the sun, they give you vitamin D instead of those vitamin D supplements that don't work either. They get a suntan. They're a source of all kinds of nutrients, and they've now been shown in randomized trials to help people going through cancer chemotherapy. So improve survival in statistically significant amounts. So they have a really important, profound effect on the immune system in ways we still don't understand. So we should all be having at least 2 or 3 portions of mushroom a week, and we're not. And that would give us all the protein we need, by the way. And 50% of all shopping trolleys, I think, include iceberg lettuce. And certainly up to recently, my fridge was full of iceberg lettuce because it lasts about 3 or 4 weeks, doesn't it? Longer than prime ministers. But there's a catch. There's absolutely no nutrients in it whatsoever. Nothing. It's just water. That just, it's a pretend healthy food. It is not at all. Especially if you stick, Hellmann's mayonnaise on it, it becomes extremely unhealthy. So I only learned this because the difference between iceberg and a nice Rossolola lettuce is about 1,000-fold difference in defense chemicals called polyphenols. And these are the key things that you're going to hear more and more about polyphenols. They are the things that rocket fuel for your gut microbes, and they really help. And we all need to have more of these in our diet because our microbes can process them, the rest of our body can't. And there's, I think, that even more in radicchio, these bitter ones. So picking your plants, you can tell this is no good. It's tightly packed plant, and because that means it doesn't need many defense chemicals. It's been genetically modified to be in this cocoon, so it doesn't get problems with sun or wind or anything else, so no natural chemicals there. This loose-leafed one, it's got to protect itself, so it has lots of defense chemicals, and that's a general principle. Look for loose-leaf plants, dark, bitter, new-growing sprouts, all these things that need to survive. They're the ones you want to be eating. Ultra-processed foods, I go a bit quickly now because time's moving on. It's nothing to do with sugar, salt, and fat content, although it doesn't help. They use the wrong salts and fats. But it's because they cause overeating. They're a special mixture in ways we don't fully understand, cause us to overeat by 200 calories a day if we have the equivalent ultra-processed meal versus a whole meal. No one ever tells you that. And the manufacturers certainly don't. And they've made their foods to be so palatable and everything's absorbed so quickly that this either triggers your brain to eat more directly, or it affects your gut microbes through all the extra chemicals they have in there to make you want more as well. Either way, they're bad. And, even within categories, though, it's important to realize not all crisps are bad. There's some studies now showing if you just have a potato crisp with the skin on and olive oil or sunflower oil, actually, there's nothing unhealthy about that. But if you have something that looks like it, but it comes in a can like this, there's very little potato in there. That is the ultimate, ultra-processed food. And it's got added chemicals to make sure that you can't just eat one. And, I get a very faint, I'm a sucker for that, but I feel sick eating it. There's something in there that is both, I love it and I hate it. And it's really interesting. So, and the same is true of, corn on the cob, unprocessed, relatively unprocessed, cornflakes, ultra-processed. Made to look like real corn, but again, it's very similar to Pringles. It bears no resemblance to the original plant. Everything's been stripped away, and chemicals are replacing it. So I think this is our biggest threat to our health.